In a negotiation, why is it always better to start out by making an ambitious offer?
Who was Rosie the Riveter, and how did she become such a legendary symbol?
Who was Lawnchair Larry? And what did he do with 42 helium-filled weather balloons?
And finally, in this episode, we tell the story of Lunch Atop a Skyscraper, one of the most iconic photographs of the 20th century.
Hello and welcome to REMORANDOM. Everything interesting. I'm Remo Giuffre.
And I'm Claudia Chanshaw.
Claudia?
Remo?
Memorandum number 4 has to get to the printer next week. I spent a lot of time yesterday proofreading the book, getting it ready for the real proofreaders. There's an army of volunteers out there who thankfully enjoy being part of the process, part of the adventure. And so last night, about dinner time, I sent the Dropbox link to all 200 pages, 100 spreads of the book to a bunch of people, along with a PDF of the Google Doc that they'd filled in, committing to reading various sections. So there's a rule, there's a new rule. They needed to commit to read and proofread carefully 2 to 3 sections in order to qualify for credit at the front of the book as a proofreader. So,
Okay, if you want the credit, you got to do the time.
Do the work. It's because it's just, it is astonishing how many times you can read something and miss. It's infuriating, like missing an extra the or a space where there shouldn't be a space.
Yeah. Or 2 N's in the word dining. It's a big deal, and you become so close to it that you don't notice anymore. That's why you need all those extra pairs of eyes.
Anyway, that's kind of exciting. And also, what I also did last night, there's always a lot of third parties involved with the stories, and I like to give them the opportunity to see the printed. The page before it's committed to the print, in case they want to tweak something or suggest something or change something. One of the chapters in the next book is a celebration of the designer Mark Newson's Lockheed Lounge. So
Lockheed Lounge, lovely.
Sent that to him. Also sent the chapter on the Wordle phenomenon, the Wordle game, to Josh Wardle in Brooklyn, where he lives now, so that he could give it a look over. So that's always a fun part of the process. Anyway,
horse's mouth, so to speak. Horse's mouth. Exactly. That's great.
I like horses' mouths.
Of course.
Another pop culture reference from Claudia. This next, the first topic from the first book that I want to talk to you about, or tell the readers about today, is called The Anchoring and Adjustment Bias. So this is something I learnt when I was at business school in New York in the 80s. And there was a course on organizational behavior, which I really, really enjoyed. And this professor, Joel Brockner, who I really liked. And this particular cognitive bias is whereby someone's decisions get influenced by a particular reference point or anchor. So, and once the value of that anchor is set, subsequent decisions, arguments, estimates made by that individual can change from what they would have otherwise agreed to, but not as much as if the anchor wasn't there. Let me see if I can explain it a different way. But
so, you need a frame of reference. You need some sort of point of reference for the negotiation.
Daniel Kahneman, the cognitive scientist who died not so long ago, sadly, in 1974, he undertook a study with another psychologist, Amos Tversky, establishing that once you set an anchor, a number, typically, people will adjust away from it to get to their final answer, but they invariably adjust insufficiently. And so their final guess is closer to the anchor than it otherwise would have been. So if you think it's very relevant in real estate, so the price that you agree to will always be higher if your initial anchor is as high as it can be, even if it appears unreasonable. So yeah, give a crazy number, because then people will say, that's crazy. I'm not offering you that. I'm going to offer you this. But this number is always higher and closer to that anchor than it would be if you hadn't set that anchor. And it's a very resilient, it's been tested a bunch of times. It's a very robust phenomenon. And not only is it a robust phenomenon, the more specific you are, the more resilient that anchor is. So the example that I give in the book is this other 2008 study by Chris Janisewski and Daniel Yu. Participants were asked to estimate the value of a beach house. They received either a general, seemingly non-specific anchor, $800,000, or a more precise and specific anchor, $799,800. And then participants with the general anchor adjusted their estimate more than those that were given the precise anchor. So the people who were given the 800,000 landed at 751 and change. The people that were given the 799 landed at 784 and change. So the more specific your initial price will tend to result in, the final price closer to the initial one. Of course, real estate agents will tell you, well, you won't even get anyone inspecting your property if you're too far over their budget. So that aside, I mean, the wisdom here is that in your negotiating life, you should always start high, or low, as the case may be, whatever you're negotiating, and get in first. And the anchor that you set will influence things in your favor. So that is my gift to you, readers and listeners. Go forth and be a winner, but not in a Donald Trump kind of way. Not in a Donald Trump kind of way, no.
Okay, so think of the anchor.
Yeah, okay. See the anchor, be the anchor.
See the anchor, be the anchor. Okay, anchors away. I'm back in World War II, aren't I? During World War II, millions of women entered the workforce to support the Allied war effort, and they took on jobs that were traditionally held by men. They might have made anchors, for instance, in the Defence Force. Mm-hmm. And there was a poster called Rosie the Riveter that became this iconic symbol to represent those women who were taking the jobs of the men. And it's very, very recognized thanks to a poster of this Rosie person created by the artist J. Howard Miller in 1942. And the poster features this very strong, determined-looking woman. She's wearing a blue jumpsuit and she's got a red polka dot bandana on. And she's flexing a bicep.
Very famous,
yes. And the image says, "We can do it." So Miller, the artist, was working for Westinghouse. And he created a series of posters that were supposed to inspire and boost morale during World War II. And they tacked them up in the break rooms of the Westinghouse factories. And they're only supposed to be up for about 2 weeks at a time. So We Can Do It was up for its designated 2 weeks, and then they pulled it down when the time was up. But the we in We Can Do It is generally thought to mean, that's a reference to everybody at Westinghouse, not just the women.
Yep.
So was the woman based on a real person? like, who was Rosie?
Mm.
So it turns out that the woman in the poster was inspired by a photograph from 1942 taken of a woman called Naomi Parker Fraley, and she was working at the Alameda Air Force Base in California. And the photo's in black and white, but she is wearing this polka dot
The
bandana,
bandana.
and the artist turned that into red and white in the poster. Now, the cute thing is that Miss Fraley did not discover that she was the inspiration for Rosie the Riveter until she visited the Rosie the Riveter World War II Homefront National Historical Park in 2011 when she was 88 years old.
Wow.
How priceless is
Incredible.
that? And Rosie was not named Rosie by the artist. The name Rosie the Riveter actually came from a popular song from 1942 that was by Red Evans and John Jacob Loeb. And the song did, in fact, celebrate the women who worked in the defense industries during the war. Now, of course, Rosie has become this iconic symbol that promotes gender equality. The legacy continues to inspire discussions about women's roles in society, workplace equality, recognition of contributions in male-dominated areas. So since it was rediscovered in the 1980s, it's become this new symbol of women's empowerment. And how's this? In 2017, the United States Congress actually designated the 21st of March as the National Rosie the Riveter Day.
Brilliant. Has that been
I just love...
Has that been banned yet by the current administration? No.
It could well do. It could well do. I just love the fact that the woman who inspired the graphic didn't find out that she was
No.
even the inspiration for the character until she was 88 years old.
And not only the fame of that original image, but all of the variations and memes and that have existed, the magazine covers that have mocked it up for one reason or another. That's great. I love those
Absolutely.
things that just capture the zeitgeist and the imagination of people and just continue forward.
It captured my imagination during COVID because, everybody was, we're all going to die and don't get vaccinated. So I stuck a pair of pantyhose on my head and tied my hair up and took a picture of me going like this with a Band-Aid on my arm saying, we can do it.
What did you, for the socials or?
Yeah, for the socials.
And so, don't want to get too personal here, but did the underwear have the polka dots or was it just red?
No, no polka dots, sadly. I should have gotten liquid paper out and dotted it out, but no, I superimposed my face on her, so it was okay.
That story idea comes from Bonnie Siegler, a New York designer that I've known for some time, who actually was very generously contributed a whole slew of ideas for our second book, and even in our subsequent books, she's always good for an idea or two. We're gonna be talking to her at some point in the future. So thanks, Bonnie. And that was Bonnie's idea. The next one was my idea, and that is Lawnchair Larry. Lawnchair Larry, so called. So we're talking early 80s, 1982. This guy, Larry Walters, he had this long time dream of flying. When he was, as per his story, when he was 13, he was in a military surplus store in California where he lived. And he saw these weather balloons sitting in there. And he got it in his head that one day those weather balloons are going to help me fly. Okay? So on the 2nd of July, 1982, his dream came true finally when he sat unrestrained, no seatbelt, on an aluminium lawn chair that he bought from Sears, connected to a cluster of 42 helium-filled weather balloons, and he took off from the backyard of his house in California, rapidly ascending to an altitude ultimately of 16,000 feet,
Oh, goodness.
with help from his girlfriend at the time, Carol von Deussen. So, okay, that's pretty bizarre. Wait till you see the photograph. It looks as strange as it sounds. So he got as I say, he bought the lawn chair from Sears. His inventory included, for his trip, a two-way radio, an altimeter, a hand compass, a flashlight, extra batteries, a medical kit, a pocket knife, 8 plastic bottles of water that were placed strapped on both sides of the chair for ballast, sandwiches, cold beer, 2 liters of Coca-Cola. Larry loved Coke. And a pellet gun for shooting the balloons when he wanted to lose altitude. So that was his master plan, right? He had this pellet gun, and he would, if he needed to lose altitude, he would just like shoot some of the balloons out.
Pop a balloon.
Anyway, things didn't quite go to plan for Larry, because even though his girlfriend was helping him, the initial ascent just was way faster than he thought it was going to be, because his plan was to ascend to not so high, and then call the air traffic control and call various authorities that sort of warned them that this was happening. Anyway, he rose so quickly that the rope that he had tied the chair to the tail bar of his car just snapped, and off he went up and up and up. So there he goes off into the distance, his girlfriend freaking out. And after 45 minutes of flight, he was approaching this 16,000 feet mark, and he was drifting into the airspace around LAX. So oopsie. So realizing that this could all end really horribly, not just for him, but for lots of other people, he pulled his pellet gun out, and he shot 7 of the balloons out. But not only did he do that, he actually just dropped his gun as well, which anyway, it was a bit of a fiasco. During the landing, he got tangled up in electrical wires. He eventually came down to earth and was greeted by the Long Beach Police Department, because they were waiting for him, and they arrested him immediately and fined him $1,500 for breaking all sorts of aviation regulations. So yeah, this story, as you might imagine, just went viral and crazy. And he was on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson and the Late Show with David Letterman the following week. And there's been at least 2 films made that been inspired by this sort of cluster ballooning story. Pixar's Up, and also this Australian film, Danny Deck Chair, with Reese Ifans and Miranda Otto, which was kind of a, average film. A reporter asked Larry why he'd done it, and his answer was, "A man just can't sit around." So that was his answer. George Plimpton, famous writer at the New Yorker, asked him, what was your feeling, after it was all over? And after a long pause, his response was this: life seems a little empty because I always had this thing to look forward to strive for and dream about, got me through the army and Vietnam, just dreaming about it. So sadly, the story doesn't end well, because in 1993, Larry hiked to his favorite campsite and shot himself in the heart. And so, yeah, I know. Sorry.
Oh,
Not
it's a
every
sad story.
I know. So he had lived his lifelong dream.
He did. He
but
did
he
it.
discovered that he just couldn't live without that dream continuing.
Oh,
So
poor
anyway,
Larry.
takes all types, and there's Larry. He made a mark. We'll remember him.
Yes. Well, he's had 2 films made about his
Oh, yeah.
adventures, so that's pretty good.
And
Now,
I'll never look at
Larry,
a Lawnchair the same way again.
no, and especially an aluminium one, they're really light. So now, Larry obviously was not afraid of heights, and I've got a story to share with you about people who were also not afraid of
Oh,
heights.
please, go on.
Because there's this famous black and white photograph that was taken in 1932 of 11 construction workers who are casually having lunch. Okay, nothing so strange
I
about
know the
that.
photo. I know the photo. Everyone knows the photo.
Yes. Okay,
Incredible.
so they're having lunch, but they're sitting on a steel beam that is suspended 260 meters above the streets of New York. And the photograph is taken, it's about the 69th floor of the RCA building during its construction, which is in the Rockefeller Center in Manhattan. And so you've got these 11 guys, like a couple of them are lighting a cigarette, somebody's having a cup of coffee, someone's just sitting there holding a bottle. And they're very casual, and it's arranged as a publicity stunt for a campaign to promote the skyscraper, which is rapidly ascending. And the image becomes known as Lunch Atop a Skyscraper. And it's an icon of 20th century photography. And it also represents this great American immigration story of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. And it's a tribute to the courageous people who immigrated to America from Germany or Scandinavia or Italy or Ireland.
Yeah.
And if you were an iron worker in those days, it's the Depression, difficult times, you got paid $1.50 an hour at that time. Now, that's equivalent to about US $32 in 2024. So there's quite a lot of money, but there was a downside. And the downside was you had to be willing that, you might die a grisly death. 2% of iron workers would perish in the workplace because of accidents every year. Another 2% would suffer a permanent disability. So it's no wonder that the Iron Workers Local 361 trade union motto was, "We do not die, we are killed." So who took the photograph? They're really not sure who took the picture. It might have been a bloke called Charles C. Ebbets, but it was discovered that there were a couple of other photographers around that day taking photos. They could have been Thomas Kelly. It could have been William Leftwich. All of them were daredevils, based on the photographs. Who were these guys? Only a few of them have been identified. There was a documentary in 2012 called Men at Lunch by the Irish filmmaker Sean O'Callaghan. Time magazine included this image in its 2016 list of the 100 most influential. Now, we'll never really be sure who all of these men were, but what they represent is something a little bit bigger than that. It's become a symbol of the city's resilience and determination, and a tribute to the immigrants who built the city.
Great. Oh, beautiful. And a gorgeous image.
Sensational image. But they are literally perched on a girder above the city.
I know.
Very casual.
I can't even look at the photo. I'm not good with heights. I can't even look at it.
Neither am I. I've been to Rockefeller Center and perched on a beam that is 1 foot off the ground, and pretended I'm sitting there swinging my legs going, "Whew, I'm up here on the girder," but it's a fake. It's a fake.
Because they do have a ride now called the Beam.
They do. It's gotten a little bit more sophisticated when I sat on the beam.
That's all for this episode of Remorandum. Everything interesting. You can order copies of our books at remorandom.com. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you consume those podcasts, or watch us on YouTube or Spotify. Claudia.
We would love you to contact us as well. You might have comments, suggestions for great stories that we haven't thought of. So head to remorandum.com, or you can email us at hello@remorandum.com with all your great ideas.
Thanks, Claudia. I've got someone waiting outside with a lawn chair and a bunch of balloons. Got to go.
Oh, Remo, are you saying you're full of hot air? Oh.
Bye.